Hello and welcome to AT and Academics. My name is Shauna Montgomery, and I am an educational consultant with the CAIU in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My colleague Jerry Schaefer and I have developed the following module as part of the Tier 1 Assistive Technology Process. This process was designed to build capacity in AT within local school districts and cooperating agencies. Each module is designed to provide information about best practice in AT. Throughout this module, you will be asked to stop and complete reflection activities located on the Google form you received with the training video. These activities are required for members of our AT teams in order to receive credit for completing each step of the tiered training. When you see this slide during module, you will be prompted to pause your video and complete the corresponding activity. In this module, we will be looking at how AT can help students academically. It could be in the area of reading, writing, executive functioning, or math. Since this is a Tier 1 training, we're going to focus primarily on lower no-tech supports as a means to begin implementing universal design in an easy, inexpensive way. We are going to start by thinking about reading. When we are looking at how to use assistive technology to support students in reading, before we can even think about the tools that we have to use, we have to think about the type of text students are expected to read. It could be a book, such as a textbook or a picture book. It could be that they are required to read magazine articles or newspaper articles. They may have to access print on web pages, or they may be using ebooks or audiobooks. Also, do they have access to the library, and are they using text through that source in order to be able to interact with the information required in their classes or the environment where they're learning? All of these things are things that we have to think about when looking for how to support students academically. Before we can even think about an assistive technology tool, we have to consider all of these different types of text. As we go through this, there are two guiding questions that I want you to keep in mind. The first one is there text available in the room for students to read? The second is, if there's text available, can the students use it? Are they able to access it? These two questions are really going to stick with us as we talk more about reading and how we can support our students in their reading. The second factor we have to consider when thinking about reading is the type of content. The different types of content are going to be important because where the student is accessing that content is going to impact how they use assistive technology in order to do that. For example, is it academic content that they need in order to access the curriculum within the regular education, special education, classroom, or another environment? Is it functional content? This could include directions or recipes or other types of reading material that they would be accessing in different environments within or outside of the school setting. There could be work-related content that is specific or specialized to the student's work placement or work experience. Lastly, there's leisure. If you're like me, I love to read books, and I like to talk about the books that I've read, and that helps me to make connections to different people based on the types of shared reading we had. So for our students who may need assistive technology, do they have access to leisure reading, and if so, how are they doing that? I want to go back to our guiding questions so you can think about them. Is there text available in these different types of content areas, and can your students use it? When they're in the different environments where they're accessing those different content area text, can they get to and use the information that is there? The third consideration for reading is accessibility. This could be the readability level. Is the text at a readability level that the students can access, or is it too far above or below where they're reading independently? Does the text have picture support for students who require that? Is there an option for read aloud built into the text or the website that they're using so that students who require text-to-speech have access to that feature? Or do we need to think about how to add on support so that they can be available to those students? The next is the physical or virtual access. Can the student physically access the text that they're trying to interact with? Can they turn the pages of the book? Can they get to the proper electronic book or audiobook? The last thing is size and color. Is the text at an appropriate size for the student so they can see it well enough? Do they need a different color so they have access to it based on whether perhaps they have a visual impairment that makes certain colors difficult for them to see? All of these things are considerations that we need to take into account when supporting students in using assistive technology to enhance or create functionality in their reading. I'd like you to take a minute or two to think about the text that's available to the students in your setting. Think about two different types of text, and also can you identify the connection they have to the academic content? Please pause the video and answer question 1 on the Google form. The second component of academics that we're going to look at is the area of writing. And I like to divide writing into two big categories and how we address this. The first one is participation, and this means the physical needs of the student. So can the student physically hold a pencil? Can they physically type on a keyboard? The second is the writing surface. Are they able to use paper, or do they need some sort of adaptation to either the paper or the surface itself? The third is communication differences. Students who are using communication devices are going to have to be able to have some different adaptations put in place in order to communicate in writing. The second big piece I consider is the process, the writing process. And this is where we talk about things like planning and brainstorming, using appropriate vocabulary for your topic, making sure that student spelling is accurate and the words are intelligible, addressing grammar and sentence formation, sentence structure, so that the message is coming across clearly. And then finally, note-taking. And when I talk about note-taking, typically we don't consider that as part of the writing process. I added it, however, because note-taking is a writing task. So students who struggle with writing are often going to also struggle with note-taking. If you think about it, note-taking is not just writing, but it's also adding on another cognitive demand of listening, sorting out information, and deciding as you're going what you're going to write down. So this is a complex process, and we're also going to talk about this in the area of executive function, but we're going to put it in this writing piece too, so that students who need supports for note-taking are also being considered in this area. When we look specifically at the participation piece of writing, there's some questions we can ask to help us understand or help guide us in how we're going to be able to support our students. What are the skills that we need to develop, and what things can we use assistive technology to support? So for example, what are tools that are available to all students to support the motor aspects of writing? And this is really getting at that universal design piece. Are there things in the classroom that all the students in that room have access to that can be helpful to writing? This could be things like physical supports, including adapted pens or pencils. It might be just writing utensils of various size. So it might be thick pencils or thin pencils or big markers or small markers. It could be pencil grips. It could also be word processing and keyboarding. So most of our classrooms at this point have a computer, at least at some point in the class, or you might even be part of a district that has one-to-one devices. Are there things that we need to consider with these devices to put into place to support specific students, or do all the students have access to those supports? Other things to think about are things like, if you're using a touch screen, do you have styluses in your room that students can use if they don't like to use their finger? I don't know how you are, but I hate having to sign my signature when I'm out and about and purchasing things on a touch screen if I don't have a pen or a utensil. I don't like to sign it with my finger. It feels awkward to me. So for students who may have issues with doing that, is there a stylus or another sort of low-tech tool available? And then, are there high-tech options that are available to all students that can really support writing? Another section that I want to talk about is the writing surface. So some students might just really benefit from a slant board. Maybe it's tough for them to write on a flat surface, but if we raise it a little bit, it becomes more accessible to them. There's adapted papers. So these can include papers that are highlighted for visual support of the lines. There's also tactile papers that have raised lines so the students actually feel the lines as they cross them and they're writing. One higher tech support would be something like voice controls. Can they control their device using their voice? Can they use text to speech or speech to text, sorry? And can they contribute to the writing environment by using their voice instead of using their fingers to write? The last section is communication differences, and really this is just getting us thinking about what are the options for students who use communication devices in order to be participating in writing. Students who use these devices have every much the right to communicate in writing and to learn how to communicate in writing as students who don't. So we need to think about what ways we can support those students. And in addition, students who are English learners may also need some supports in writing, especially if they are just learning or new to their second language. Writing is a difficult task, so they may need some additional supports, and that might be available through assistive technology. In addressing the writing process component of writing, we have to look at what types of tools are available to support all students in the writing process. A lot of these tools are things that most students could use in order to write. Like I said before, writing is a very complex task. It takes motor planning, it takes cognitive planning, it takes revising and editing and all those recursive processes that are high-level cognitive tasks that students may be spending a lot of their cognitive energy doing, and the physical component and the planning component are things that we can support via technology. So some examples of tools that can support all students are graphic organizers. Maybe as they're preparing their writing, a graphic organizer would help ease some of that cognitive load. Sequencing cards are another good tool. Word banks, word walls, and sound walls are great supports for the general classroom. Structured or closed notes, spelling and grammar checkers, and even though we typically think of this as a higher tech tool, again, most word processing tools have these built in. Microsoft Word has a built-in spelling and grammar checker. Google Docs has a built-in spelling and grammar checker. If we're using those tech tools regularly with our students, are we teaching our students how to access these additional supports to be able to check their spelling and grammar? If we're not using those tech tools, maybe we just need to have a straight-up grammar checklist so students can go through their writing with support, or maybe not if not needed, and check their grammar and think about if their writing is correct, if their sentence structure is correct. The last two are higher tech tools, but I think they're important for writing, even though we're really focusing on lower tech things. So word prediction and text-to-speech and speech-to-text are two higher tech tools that can really be very valuable to students who have difficulty with spelling, who have difficulty with finding the right word, who have difficulty with the physical aspect of writing, as well as the planning process. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're looking at tools to support writing. I'd like you to take a second and brainstorm the writing tools that you currently have in your environment, and what are some things that you could do to begin supporting writing with your students using these tools. So please pause the video and complete question 2 on the Google form. The next area of academic support is looking at executive function, and these can be supports for planning, organization, time management, focus and attention, and task completion. And when we think about executive functioning, these skills are really necessary for students to be able to participate well in their academic environment. Once they get to, especially the older grades, students are required to really plan out and manage their time. They're really required to keep their materials organized so that they can turn things in on time, so that they can be prepared for tests. When we think about tools that can support that, it could be things like multi-modal schedules. So if a student has an agenda book and they're writing down their schedule, that might work for some, but other students might need a picture schedule, or some students might even need a schedule with objects depending on the type of challenges that they have. This could also be checklists for helping manage materials, manage assignments, manage due dates. Timers are another good general tool that will support many students, and many students find beneficial. And then finally, we have prompts, and these could be visual, verbal, tactile, or kinesthetic prompts that we want to set up for students to help them with these executive functioning skills. What we have to remember about this is that all of these things must be explicitly instructed to students. Executive functioning skills can be splintered and can be difficult to manage as far as teaching students how to really develop these skills and make them work for the task that is targeted. So we have to make sure we're not just giving students resources and tools, but we're teaching them how to use those tools. It's a key component of providing these supports to students. The last academic concept we're going to talk about in supporting students with AT tools is math. I'm looking at what AT tools are available to support all students in your class with math computations and math applications. So when we think about computations, calculators are a really widely used, easy tool to put into place so that students have access to them to be able to support them in calculations. Another one is graph paper. Some students really have difficulty in lining up the columns, the tens, the ones, the hundreds column, and so graph paper can really be helpful in this. Things like visuals in the form of having formulas posted in the room so students don't have to actually remember them, or maybe having cards on their desk that have the visuals so that they don't have to worry about remembering the formula. They can just remember how to apply that formula. Math manipulatives are great to have, great tools that will support lots of different students and different ability levels. And then finally, graphic organizers. When we think about completing math applications, these are also things that require multiple steps. And some students may just need the support of a graphic organizer to help them through those steps. These are really simple, low-tech or no-tech things that can be put into place to support all your students in developing their math strengths. It's your turn to think this through for your students in your setting. Think about what tools do you anticipate would best support your students' executive function or math skills. You can choose one or the other. So please pause the video at this point and complete question 3 on the Google form. Thank you for taking the time to complete this module. If you have any questions about this module or would like to discuss your role in the AT process, please feel free to email or call us by visiting the link on your screen, which is the CAIU Assistive Technology website. Please remember that AT consultants are available for in-person training and consultation with your team.